Did you know that the Clone Wars are not George Lucas's invention, but the likely future of humanity? Or about the fact that relatively recently, scientists almost set fire to the Earth's atmosphere with one of their experiments? How about guessing which thing can be both useful and incredibly harmful? Our world is full of creepy things. Some of them scientists have not yet fully investigated, and some even appeared thanks to human experiments. Get ready! You'll find a selection of dangerous and sometimes just crazy facts about science. And we will start with the phenomenon called Call of the Void. This is the sudden thought of doing something deadly irrational, such as the desire to jump down, which appears at heights, or the desire to turn into the oncoming lane while driving a car. Many people, at least once in their lives, felt this and were afraid, thinking, what the hell is wrong with me? Write in the comments if you've had this experience. I'm sure there are many of us. But, despite its widespread nature, scientists have only recently begun to study this phenomenon. It's more common in people with high levels of anxiety, but this is not necessarily a sign that your psyche has turned bad, nor does it indicate a subconscious desire to harm yourself or others. Scientists believe that people who experience this phenomenon are often mentally healthy, just their brain, analyzing possible dangers, tries to avoid them, increasing awareness of the danger due to such contradictory opinions. For example, when you're standing on top of a mountain, your internal defense mechanisms are likely to sound the alarm. Be careful not to fall. And it can make you instinctively tense up, take a step back, or even check the ground is solid underneath you. But after that, a more moderate process begins. You start thinking, why did I do this now? It's alright. Did I really want to jump off? The phenomenon may be related to the activity of brain structures responsible for processing fear, danger, and controlling impulses such as the amygdala and prefrontal cortex. When the brain sees the possibility of danger, it can trigger a sudden impulse to realize that it is a danger, even if the implementation of the worst-case scenario is unlikely. But since our brain is not fully understood, scientists still cannot name the exact reason, so it's never a shame to contact a specialist if you feel fear and depression about this. Back in 2002, the company Clonaid, founded by a sect that believes that humanity appeared with the help of space aliens and genetic engineering, announced the birth of the first cloned person. A girl named Eve was supposedly born by cesarean section and was quite healthy. The community erupted in discussions about the ethics of this experiment, and I'm sure all the intelligence agencies did everything possible to find out if it was true. Some were even going to sue Clonaid, worried that the child was being treated like a lab rat. But the organization did not provide any evidence of the existence of Eve, as well as about 13 other clones that, according to Clonaid, they made later. In addition, there's a high chance that this is a fictitious company at all, and they don't even do research, let alone create clones. Let's pray that this actually is the case. Because to be honest, it's creepy to imagine that in the basement of some sectarians who are obsessed with aliens, there really is a super laboratory in the spirit of fantastic action movies with a bunch of cloned people. But the question still remains, is human cloning even possible? Now, we already know how to clone plants and even animals. The first successful example was a sheep named Dolly. It was cloned as much as 30 years ago. Then it created a great response and gave rise to a whole bunch of new phobias and paranoid thoughts. Governments in most countries have hastened to ban the creation of human clones for ethical reasons. Although, let's be honest, when did ethics stop scientists? For example, in 2023, Chinese scientists who even wanted to sneeze at it crossbred a man and a rabbit. The rabbit's egg was separated from its DNA, and then human DNA was placed there. Whether they stopped the development of the embryo or just told everyone so, it's unknown, but you can imagine how pretty or ugly the result would have been. And you also need to understand that cloning is not a magic copier that creates a duplicate of a person with memories and experiences. Only your body can be recreated, but not your mind and personality, which are programmed mainly by the environment. There have been official attempts to clone human embryos. Everything is within the law. Scientists were not going to create full-fledged people. They needed embryos for clinical research of stem cells, and several laboratories have succeeded. But in 2018, Chinese researchers reported the birth of the first monkey clones. Research has once again confirmed that theoretically, you and I can also be cloned. It's likely that the technology is already working successfully, just secretly. This means that someone in your environment can be a clone. Genetic engineering is now being played around the world. A few years ago, Australian scientists grew the first artificial mini-brain from mouse stem cells, which learned to play ping pong in just 5 minutes. It was connected to the video game using electrodes. The poor creature often did not hit the ball, but he tries very hard and evolves. Perhaps everyone experiences insomnia from time to time and is usually treated, but there is also fatal insomnia. There is a rare, incurable, and hereditary disease, the only cure for which is eternal sleep. As soon as the disease manifests itself, a person will have about a year left, but this time will turn into a real nightmare. Over time, the amount of sleep will decrease, the person will be on his feet for 23 hours, will pass out from time to time, but will never be able to enter REM and deep sleep phases. The pituitary gland will stop releasing hormones, tissues will stop renewing, and only after that the person will finally fall asleep forever. To date, there is no cure or prevention from this disease. One hope is that scientists will leave cloning alone and deal with fatal insomnia. Someone's forced to stay awake due to illness, and someone because Shahed is being loudly shot down over their heads. We're constantly trying to improve our content, and we'll be grateful if you support our work by becoming a channel sponsor. This way, you'll get early access to the latest videos, and we'll know that sleepless nights were not in vain. Click on the link in the video description to find out more details. Thank you, and continue. Prion diseases are also a big problem for scientists. As fatal insomnia, they are not treated, their nature is poorly understood, they are inherited, and cause terrible neurodegeneration. Prions are infectious protein particles that are somewhat similar to viruses. You can get infected with them through the meat of a sick animal, but sometimes prions occur in the human body spontaneously and for no reason. Well, because they just wanted to. At first, there are no symptoms, but later there are many of them, from mild coordination disorders to death of the central nervous system. There is no cure for this. We still don't know what causes this disease and have not ever been able to fully understand their structure. In theory, this can happen to anyone at any time, but the only advantage is that these diseases are extremely rare. Somehow it will pass. Maybe. If a dog is treated for fleas and then allowed to swim in the lake, almost the entire invertebrate population in that lake will die. It's about chemicals. They're not harmful to dogs and people, but for an ordinary lake, such a dog is a real eco-disaster. That is why veterinarians warn people not to let dogs swim in reservoirs for at least a week. This warning is made precisely in order to protect invertebrates and defenseless creatures from chemical attack. Antibiotics are a great gift and at the same time a great curse. Today, scientists are trying to find another way to fight bacteria, because over the years they mutate and become invulnerable to more antibiotics. That is, in the future, any long-standing disease that is now treated with just one pill can become fatal. To stop this process, you need to drink a full course of antibiotics and not stop when it gets a little better, and only if they are prescribed by a doctor. You can also not flush them down the toilet or throw them in the trash, but in fact, this does not guarantee any result. The truth is that most antibiotics, namely almost 80%, are used in animal husbandry. Almost all the animals on large farms and poultry farms are in such terrible conditions that without antibiotics, they would never have made it to your table. Enjoy your meal. When the smartest people on Earth created a nuclear bomb, they also had to calculate the flammability of the Earth's atmosphere. This was done in order to make sure the explosion does not set the entire atmosphere on fire to hell, and we don't die from radiation, but already solar. The worst part is that when the scientists did detonate the first bomb, they still didn't have an answer to that question. I mean, they just crossed their fingers and thought, well, may blow over. Well, really blew over. When pediatricians started using X-rays at the beginning of the 20th century, they noticed a huge number of fractures in young children. At first, doctors thought it was some kind of new bone disease, but in fact, it wasn't until that moment that it became clear to the world how widespread child abuse was. It's unpleasant to imagine, but there are almost certainly dead animals in our orbit. The fact is that in the early years, animals were regularly sent into space, but not all of them returned. Some died on the way home, and some remained forever in primitive spacecraft that never returned to Earth. The more we learn about space, the more frightening it seems. There's one galaxy with a long name, but in simple words, it's called the Galactic Graveyard. It's located 10 billion light years away from Earth, and no stars are born there anymore. It consists entirely of dying red dwarfs and black exoplanets. There are already 6 such galactic cemeteries where there is nothing else, but in fact, there are many of them. If you think you're pregnant and there's nowhere to buy a test, then there's another option. For this, you'll need to find an ordinary frog. We take it and inject some of our own urine into the thigh. If the amphibian starts spawning, congratulations, you're pregnant. This crazy test was invented in the early 20th century, but it is perfect for a post-apocalyptic world. In the 1950s, frogs were bred in hospitals as a live pregnancy test. Interestingly, the efficiency was quite high, but very soon the usual tests appeared and frogs were gradually abandoned, and something tells me they didn't mind. In the end, the most unsettling thing about science is that it helps you glimpse how everything will end. When all the black holes have evaporated into elementary particles, and they will. When every white dwarf has gone cold and dark, and they will. The universe will transform into a vast, dark, and infinitely empty void. Forever. But until that time comes, we can cherish the life we have. Or at the very least, try to. Thank you for watching. We'll meet again soon, if the space still doesn't disappear.